known for the attacker would have had the permanent concealed handgun with them if they had been allowed to go and take them into the movie theater. Instead, it's pretty clear that no one in Theater 9 at the Cinemark movie theater had a permanent concealed handgun with them. Now there's been some aftermath, even though none of the other movie theaters within a 20-minute drive had posting banning concealed handguns at the time. One of the movie theaters, the Harkin 18 Northfield that I mentioned, with the largest auditorium, has since changed its policy, so it's now starting to post. But it's not just the Colorado case. The Sikh temple also was a gun-free zone. You go through different mall shootings or other places that have been there, the West Roads Mall in Salt Lake, or the mall shooting in Omaha, Nebraska a few years ago. And again, you see the same type of pattern. One mall out of 7 posts in Omaha. That's the one where the killer went to. But it's even broader than that. If you look at all these multiple victim public shootings in the United States, in which more than 3 people have been killed. So again, you're talking about a public shooting, not as a result of some other type of crime, not as a result of some type of gang fight that's going on, but where the point of the killing is going to try to just go and kill people or create carnage. With only one exception, every single one of those multiple victim public shootings have occurred in places where permanent concealed handguns are banned. And you'd think at some point, and I was hoping this last time would be one of them, you'd actually see news stories that mention it. You go through and you look at the news coverage in the Colorado case. They have, very quickly, they get details about whether the guns were purchased legally or not. They get information on the types of guns, often bogus discussions about assault weapons with little or no understanding about what an assault weapon is in that case. It's almost, kind of expected that there's going to be some type of discussion about that in these cases. One thing that came up a lot after the Aurora shooting was comparisons to Columbine. And one thing that I don't think most people realize is that the killers in the Columbine case were strongly opposed to permanent concealed handguns. In fact, the New York Times had, shortly after the attack, I'll give them credit, but I don't think they recognized the significance of this, had a front page discussion about how Dylan Klebold had shared with his dad their strong opposition to the concealed handgun law that was being debated in the Colorado legislature at that time. And in other places I've seen discussions about how people wrote to his state legislators. And a couple things just to note. One, the Colorado concealed handgun law that was being considered at that time would have allowed permanent concealed handguns to be carried onto school property. And the other thing that I think is quite striking is that the Colorado attack at Columbine occurred on the very same day that the Colorado State House was scheduled for final passage of the concealed handgun law there in the state. So Michael Moore brings bogus comparisons, claims about bowling, to get the name of his movie. But the very fact that the timing coincided with the attempt to pass the concealed handgun law, had already been passed in the state senate, the governor said he was going to sign it, is something that doesn't seem to get talked about in the news. But it isn't just in the United States, this pattern. Europe has about the same per capita rate of multiple victim public shootings as the United States does. I often get calls from people in the European media after we have multiple victim public shootings here in the United States, where I'm asked things like, what is it about you Americans with your water supply or something? Is there something in there that causes you to go and engage in these multiple victim public shootings? And I've taken over time, particularly after the Virginia Tech attack, to start asking the reporters questions. And so at that time I would get a call from a reporter in Germany asking me that, and I'd say, well, could you tell me what country in the world has had 2 of the 3 worst public school shootings? And he wouldn't know. And I would say, it's your country, Germany. In fact, Germany's had 3 of the worst 5 public school shootings. But the thing is, I think there are a couple things that are going on. One is you have all these separate countries in Europe, and so people don't kind of aggregate them up together. And also, I think it's just, it fits into their mold about what the United States is like versus Europe, and so it fits more of a story. You know, obviously we have the Norway situation where 69 people were killed, but you look at even Switzerland, a country that doesn't have many gun-free zones. In fact, it didn't have any gun-free zones prior to 1999. And after that time, they designated a few gun-free zones. Basically, they're in government buildings. Over the last decade, there's been several big multiple-victim public shootings in Switzerland. The largest one at the parliamentary canton of Zug, 11 years ago. 14 members of parliament were killed. And in that case, it was in a gun-free zone, a place where guns were banned. And I can go through the history of the United States. I think most of you have some idea here. You know, the biggest thing, I'll just skip ahead here, the biggest thing is just, when you run into these discussions, is about assertions about hypotheticals. So Mayor Bloomberg brings these things up about crossfires that might happen where innocents get killed. This is the type of thing where we can go and look up data. I can't find a multiple victim public shooting that's been stopped in the United States by someone with a permit concealed handgun where an innocent bystander has been shot by the permit holder. You know, I know people will go and bring up the Empire State Building shooting in which 9 bystanders were killed by the 2 police officers here recently, but or shot by them. But when you look at permit holders, and maybe it's part because they don't have the legal protections that police officers do, they're much more reticent to fire their guns. And in fact, it's interesting how many of these multiple victim public shootings get stopped without people firing their guns to begin with. And I know, you know, Florida here, other places, one can talk about the behavior of permit holders generally, how extremely law-abiding. But it's mentioned, Florida's, maybe there's somebody from Florida who can tell me this, but they recently took it off their website. But they used to have amazingly detailed data that was put up monthly. And from October 1st, 87, up through July 31st of last year, Florida had given out over 2 million permits. The average person having a permit for over 13 years. And yet with millions of people having permits for all that time, there's only 168 who had their permits revoked for any type of firearms-related violation. Now I could go through my work, I could go through a story that just came up this last week with Mother Jones, supposedly some research that they've done. But, you know, I think the bottom line, and hopefully we can get the media to begin to cover this type of thing, is that there's one pattern that seems to be consistent across these cases more than anything else. And that they keep on occurring in these gun-free zones. And that these zones, rather than making victims safer, unintentionally serve as magnets for these attacks to occur. If these were random, then they would be occurring mainly in places where guns are not banned. But that's not what they do. Virtually all but one occurs in places in these tiny areas in these right-to-carry states where concealed handguns are banned. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, we have our next panel that would come up, please. We are going to do this in alphabetical